Sim racing has legitimately gone backwards. And if you are to look at the sim racing space and what sim racers are looking for themselves, you can't help come to the conclusion that even the sim racers want the dullest, least imaginative, most restrictive to drive, and most limiting in racecraft opportunity race cars and racing simulators, gravitating towards whatever is the most commercial, tired and soulless thing possible. Now don't worry, this video is not about the nature of capitalism and the way in which it sucks the joy and soul from everything it touches. No, instead this video is more of a reflection on the current state of things, why the things are how they are, the absolute absurdity of the current situation, and of course a cure for those of you suffering from the dullification of Sims. Someone said they don't like us saying subscribe so you can unsubscribe every video. Fortunately, they subscribed and have now unsubscribed, as foretold in the prophecy of Muscle. If you like that prophecy, hit the like button, and thank you, as always, to all our channel members who regret being channel members. It's appreciated. Well, would you just look at this background footage? This is Assetto Corsa 1 with bog standard shader patch installed, my own little tweaks to the post-processing, a free Race Sim Studio mod, the 1979 V8 Formula car. And to be clear, the Formula cars built into Assetto Corsa are actually superb to drive and perfectly fine. There's a myth that you need mods to have good cars in AC, it's just not true. And of course we're driving around Brands Hatch in the sunset. This is also on my server, which anyone can join. Search for Gamer Muscle, and the password is of course T in capital letters, TEA, Tango Echo Alpha. And well, whilst we were driving these cars with subscribers whilst live streaming, it really highlighted how backwards most of sim racing has become, and the fact that I think most sim racers are completely unaware of how backwards a lot of sim racing has gone. And I mean in particular, specifically in the aspect of the actual driving mechanics of the vehicles that people are racing, and the core gameplay, the sort of intrinsic essence of the racing. It's like those components, the real motivations for why you think someone would be playing a racing simulator, have just progressively degraded. As you all know, Assetto Corsa 1 came out in 2014, and to be clear, there's a lot of Assetto Corsa 1 that's not great. The pit stops, lack of ranked multiplayer, some aspects of how the tyres overheat, car setups. There's a lot that's not great about AC1. But fundamentally, and I think this is also the case for Automobilista 1, Live for Speed, and some of the older driving simulators, Richard Burns Rally, the underlying gameplay is on another level to Le Mans Ultimate, iRacing, Assetto Corsa Competizione, Gran Turismo 7. The underlying driving is on such another level. This is effectively what you would expect if someone were to announce a super duper next gen racing simulator. If you were to hide everything with AC and relaunch this with slightly different graphics, with it curated, you would genuinely have something that would be 2 to 3 times better in the raw actions, driving and what you're doing as a player than anything else on the market. And again, it's not really just AC. I think if you did AMS1 mechanics, but with a brushed up graphics engine, or you did Richard Burns Rally, basically exactly the same game with what it is, a structured single player with rally stages and a thing to play through, but with slightly newer graphics engine and a bit of marketing, you would have stuff that would absolutely be more compelling and better as a video game and better as a simulator than the supposed latest top-notch sims that we've had since 2020. And therein lies, I think, the sort of cultural regression. A lot of people came to sim racing during the COVID times of 2020-2021, which is fantastic because I love people to be ruining their lives with driving sims. And even the modern driving simulators, I think in many ways, are far better than lots of AAA titles coming out. So, you know, they're not the worst of games, even if they're a regression on what we had in the past. But all these new players to sim racing, brought in through the COVID times, were welcome to sim racing with this Assetto Corsa Competizione iRacing GT3 car landscape. Positively, some of the dullest vehicles to be able to drive in racing simulators. Now, don't get me wrong, there's many benefits to GT3 cars. People know the brands, people know the different types of vehicles, and the really big positive, GT3 means that you can have many different cars in a single race, so it sticks everyone together, and when they get bored of one car, they can try another car. So functionally, there's lots of great positives with GT3 cars. I'm happy to have them, and I do think they should be quite a popular and prominent part of sim racing. What I don't think should be the case is that everything is GT3. And what I think is definitely the case is that a lot of the people that have come to sim racing are totally unaware that there's many other vehicles that are intrinsically more interesting to drive. I don't think they're aware of the correlation between the size of vehicles, the weight of vehicles, and the lack of in-car systems, or how in-car systems actually affect the racing. And I also don't think that they're aware of how far ahead the older racing simulators are in terms of what the driver's actually doing and compared to the modern racing sims. There's a sizable number, if not a majority of sim racers now, that have never really played the first Assetto Corsa as a racing simulator. They've never really played Richard Burns Rally or Automobilista 1 as a racing simulator, trying to race and actually spending focused time on it. They have come into the sims of Assetto Corsa Competizione and iRacing and have had their brains conditioned by the rote memorization robotic driving that those simulators demand. They genuinely think that real slick tyres and car tyres behave as they do in iRacing, where if you try to actively drive and balance a car at the limit, you automatically lose time. Absolutely a given, regardless of racing line. They genuinely don't think that you should feel a range of force feedback load to describe where the tyres are at, and they expect those wheels to just turn off. ACC, iRacing, GT7, and even much of the content in Assetto Corsa Evo is like this. So their entire framework and expectation has been set by the simulators that they've come into. Just as I think in many ways, I think GPL and Richard Burns Rally and iRacing, because it's so old, has just been around so long, I think those simulators set the expectations for many older sim racers. But there was this glorious period of Live for Speed, Netcar Pro, Assetto Corsa, GTR Evolution, Race Room and Automobilista 1, where somehow the sim racing software developers and sim racing space seemed to kind of understand the essence of what it is to drive vehicles. But I think it's entirely possible that this has gone, and because the majority of the consumer base are unaware of this, so has the demand for things to continue progressing in this direction. We seem to have just been incredibly unlucky that COVID happened to happen when we had absolutely the worst sim racing games as the prominent titles in the sim racing space. Combine this with the YouTuber and influencer growth in the sim racing space, a problem that I am happy to be a part of, and you have all the focus of all these driver coaches, driver training, advice on hardware, and how great and amazing sim racing is, all focused on massively being overly positive on what happens to be the current consensus, the current landscape of sim racing. Because if you're an influencer, you really are not going to do too well for subscribers, selling products and getting people to use your affiliate links, or just growing in popularity if you sit there and you say, yep guys, sorry, 10, 15, 20 years ago things were a lot better for XYZ reason, and what you've got right now is a little bit rubbish, and yeah, your £1,000 DD wheel and £5 million sim rig kind of not really going to help you when the software that you can use that equipment with is so massively off the mark. So I feel like we're in this kind of Bermuda Triangle of stuck in terrible sim racing software land with people largely unaware of it, apart from a few grumpy old sim racers that have yet to die of old age. Now, I don't want to be entirely negative through the whole video. That would be just like one of our live streams. So what I will say, there's some rays of light through the clouds. One of the rays of light is you do see stuff like F4 cars, granted it's in iRacing, but you do see F4 cars gaining traction in sim racing and people really doing a lot of racing with that. I think there's also a bit of a groundswell with MX5 cars, which you might think, oh, an MX5 car is worse than GT3, but actually for racing an MX5 is more compelling, more dynamic, more strategic and more interesting than GT3 cars. And the optimistic part of my brain, which I dare not to engage, sometimes activates and says, oh, give him a muscle. Maybe Project Motor Racing will show people how great GT cars can be, vintage GT, and it will have ranked multiplayer, and so maybe people will become aware of it. New people will become aware of how awesome that is. Or maybe Kunos will actually sort Evo out, and again it will have a range of content, and when they do daily races with fantastic vehicles, again people will be shown the light and a glimmer of hope. But probably things will be terrible. As it is right now though, just humour me if you haven't. Load up the original Assetto Corsa, join our server, do some laps in the car we've got on our server, or just download this RSS Formula car, or any of the vintage Formula cars in AC, or maybe the Porsche RSR, that's a GTE car, or the Porsche 2017 Cup car, the Lotus 211, the F2004. Load one of those up and tell me, put some real time into it and actually try and do good laps, and get back to me and tell me if that driving experience, how it was worse than what you're getting in the other simulators that you play at this point in time. I really don't know how anybody could come to the conclusion that the raw driving experience isn't on another level. Now, of course, we will do more driving of this car on our server. Absolutely fantastic work by RSS, and so fun racing with subscribers. It was just so good. This was so fun to do, guys, and that's what's triggered this rant. just it was just so good. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to know, as always, if you got this far in the video, Teapot Fish Teapot, be interested to know what you guys think of the state of sim racing. I do not think it's the golden age. It's more like the dark ages of sim racing. Be interested to know where you guys are at with that. But yes, thanks for enduring a Game of Muscle rant. We'll be back for some more sim racing, despite having just done a 20-hour live stream. I have something wrong with me. Till the next one, thank you very much for watching. Happy tea drinking. Take care, and goodbye.